It's Thursday, December 12th. I'm Herman Green with your midday news. A special welcome to those of you watching online at onespotmedia.com. Trade opportunities between Kenya and Jamaica are opening up. That's according to Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who was addressing the Jamaican diaspora in Kenya earlier this week. Mr. Holness said the two countries have not been utilizing the opportunities they have. TVJ's Shamela Pullen tells us more.
Trade and commerce, technology and innovation, as well as education, are just a few of the areas Prime Minister Andrew Holness says greater work is needed to strengthen ties between Kenya and Jamaica.
The Kenyan market is a large market. The population is about 35, closer to 50 million. Of course, the Jamaican population is 2.7 million. Yes. Closer to 3 million. In fact, there are more Jamaicans living overseas than living in the country. But there are great possibilities.
Prime Minister Holness says part of the plan is also to see more Kenyans coming to Jamaica. However, with climate change being a global issue, there is a concern about how it's affecting tourism in Jamaica, which is why Mr. Holness says the government is now doing work to develop resilience in that area.
In fact, I'm here as well with my Minister of Tourism, and he has been working very closely with your Minister of Tourism because we both have tourism as an important plank in our economy, but there are many risks to tourism, climate change being the biggest risks, and therefore we have to work together to figure out how we're going to make that industry resilient.
Which is why Mr. Holness says the government is now doing some work to develop resilience in that area. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister charged the Jamaican diaspora to start figuring out ways in which it can further strengthen ties between the two countries.
Call up your family in Jamaica, your friends in Jamaica, your business people in Jamaica, to say, hey, there are opportunities for investment and trade in Kenya. Come and see what is in Kenya. And for you as well here to say to Kenyan businessmen, hey, there are opportunities in Jamaica. Go and see what is happening in Jamaica.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang is again insisting that the government is committed to the fight against crime. His reassurance comes on the heels of Tuesday night's shooting in Dover St. Catherine, where 9 persons were shot, 4 fatally. TVJ's O'Shane Masters reports.
The government continues to face pressure to deal with the country's spiraling crime rate. The criticism comes following the shooting of 9 persons, 4 fatally, in Dover St. Catherine on Tuesday night, an area which is under a state of emergency SOE. But speaking in St. James yesterday, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says his ministry is not letting up in the crime fight.
We are working hard at bringing it under control. It's not an easy task because we have allowed all aspects of the pathology of crime to deteriorate rapidly.
He says the crime situation was allowed to get out of control due to the neglect of the police force since becoming an independent nation by both administrations.
You call the police, like when you're falling down, you say Jesus, and you never go to church again for the rest of the life. So when you have a crime, you call the police, and you expect them to have cars, you never buy them any. You expect them to stay in the police station, but the police station is leaking and they can't stay in there. You expect them to communicate, but you destroy the radio system, and that has been the history of the police.
Dr. Chang also noted that greater attention would have to be given to inner-city communities, as those settlements are major contributors to the country's crime problem.
We have allowed our inner-city community to deteriorate. Squatting is an illegal activity. It generates an illegal ecosystem, which generates an illegal activity, which eventually leads to killing and murder, because then individuals in those communities, they find their own way to make money, and they do it very creatively, and they make plenty of it. And they buy, besides building their house, they buy cars, and they retain their base, and they buy guns.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
A member of the young professional arm of the People's National Party, the Patriots, was fatally shot along Chesterfield Drive in St. Andrew last night. He has been identified as 44-year-old Kevin Brown of McIntyre Villa in Kingston. Mr. Brown was also a Justice of the Peace. It's reported that about 8:45, Mr. Brown was seen running along Chesterfield Drive crying for help. He had several wounds. Mr. Brown was pronounced dead at hospital. The Agriculture Ministry is this afternoon being called upon to pay greater attention to the country's coffee industry. This as there has been a fall in coffee exports and a decline in the price it fetches. We have more in this report.
Since this year, the Coffee Exporters Association had been calling for a fund to be established to ease the fallout in the sector. That call is now being echoed by the association's head, Norman Grant. Speaking at the inaugural awards banquet, Mr. Grant called for some $150 million to be allocated from the budget of the Agriculture Ministry to the coffee farming sector annually. He says this would help with input costs for coffee farmers and the loss of revenue due to a shortfall in the export of coffee. Mr. Grant believes this should be in place until the sector rebounds.
It is important because the coffee sector have over 5,000 farmers, supports 102,000 farm families. It generates $15 million in export, down from the 25 million some 4 years ago. With this kind of investment, Minister, we could see export from the sector climbing over the next 5 years to over $50 million.
Mr. Grant is also calling for a cess on green bean coffee imports as well as a cess on roasting beans to create a double taxation regime. He says this will benefit the industry by using the funds raised to provide input and price support for local coffee farmers. But Agriculture Minister Audley Shaw is questioning why there is such a decline in the local production of coffee, while globally the sector is booming.
How can the coffee industry be growing globally, but in Jamaica, that has the finest coffee in the world, is in decline? That don't make sense at all.
Mr. Shaw also noted that the government is seeking to improve on the quality of coffee beans by improving the infrastructure in areas where it is grown. This will be done through a $100 million grant from the Chinese government.
Road infrastructure, access infrastructure, so that we can build out better and higher quality production of Blue Mountain coffee. We're working on that project right now.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday Package, but stay with us. More news right after these messages. Welcome back, continuing the news. The Consumer Affairs Commission, CAC, is encouraging shoppers, particularly online shoppers, to conduct their business with caution when doing transactions in the Yuletide season. Speaking at a recent think tank session, Information Technology Manager at the CAC, Andrew Evie, warned online users to look out for fraudulent emails. TVJ's Prince Moore tells us more.
With increased internet access and online shipping companies, many Jamaicans are engaging in online shopping. It is why the Consumer Affairs Commission, CAC, is warning online shoppers to be aware of different email scams. IT Manager at the CAC, Andrew Evie, says most persons fall prey to email phishing scams.
This is where someone will send you an email with a deal that is almost irresistible to pass up. We need to be very cautious when we come across unsolicited email from sources that we are not sure of, giving you a deal that is almost irresistible to pass up.
He adds that impersonation is also another type of email scam used to solicit money from unsuspecting online users, particularly corporate users.
For example, they may send an email to the accountant to say, hey, transfer. The email seemed to be coming from, say, the CEO or another manager and requesting a transfer of funds to an account. So the accountant or the person responsible for that transfer may very well consider that email legitimate and execute the transfer, not knowing that it's actually coming from somebody else and not from the company.
Therefore, he's advising individuals to install antiviral software onto their computers to protect themselves as well as their information.
There are a number of free antivirus software out there that we're encouraging persons to install. One of them that I use is AVG, and the free version is very good, and it gives you real-time information about any possible threats that are occurring on your computer.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, Rosalie Gage Gray, believes more psychosocial care is needed in children's home. At a recent fire drill at Mustard Seed Children's Home, Mrs. Gage Gray highlighted that psychosocial care is critical for improving resilience in children.
We find that an environment that is conducive to good learning, to good recreation, to rehabilitation is going to be very important. So we have been working to not only do the physical infrastructure, but to build the capacity and the resilience of the children that we have, so that carry them to a place where they can understand the issues that they have gone through and how they are going to advance and get better as they go along.
3 persons were injured and taken to hospital following a motor vehicle crash in Port Maria, St. Mary this morning. According to reports, the 3 individuals were traveling towards Port Maria shortly after 5 o'clock. The driver reportedly lost control of the vehicle, which then slammed into a building. The extent of their injuries is not known at this time. A major cleanup operation is now underway in the Sandy Gully in St. Andrew. Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwestern, Dr. Nigel Clark, says the work will be extended to other sections of the gully like Washington Boulevard and Perkins Boulevard. Dr. Clark says the cleanup was needed as there were trees as high as 20 feet contributing to environmental problems.
The fact that when it rains, the debris and the trees and the large vegetation leads to flooding at times, and is a security risk. It's sometimes a site where mosquitoes can breed. I endeavored to try to do something about it, and since that time I've been in discussions with the NWA, and I'm very happy that the work has now begun, and this work will take place over probably the next 2 weeks.
Despite earning opportunities in research, product development, and other forms of investment, Jamaica remains poor. It's a concern Agriculture Minister Audley Shaw is again raising, as he believes Jamaica's resources are underutilized.
We're too blessed to be so poor. It's unacceptable. Of 101 known medicinal plants in the world, 51 of them grow in Jamaica. And 33 of them, 33% of that are indigenous to Jamaica, cannot be found anywhere else in the world.
Mr. Shaw was speaking at the official groundbreaking ceremony for Organic Growth Holding in St. James yesterday. The company is seeking to become the lead exporter of CBD wellness products in the world. That sector is poised to be a $20 billion industry by 2022. But even with that goal in mind, Mr. Shaw is calling for some level of caution.
While Jamaica explores these opportunities, we are mindful that we must endeavor to protect our local indigenous strains and the Jamaican brand.
We go now to sports. A late strike from veteran Rakeef Thomas earned the Leaders Waterhouse a 1-1 draw with Arnett Gardens in their Wednesday night Red Stripe Premier League fixture at the Anthony Spalding Sports Complex. Paul Wilson opened the scoring for Arnett Gardens after 60 minutes. However, with 4 minutes of regular time to play, Thomas brought Waterhouse level to take last year's runner-up to 34 points, 6 ahead of Mount Pleasant Academy and 7 adrift of Arnett Gardens. Meanwhile, Harbourview jumped from 9th to 5th after beating Vere United 2-0 at the Harbourview Stadium. Norman Campbell got both goals for the Stars of the East in the 28th and 58th minutes. And that's the Midday News. I'm Herman Green. Please join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the News Sports and Production teams, good afternoon.